Hey everyone, welcome to Catalyst Energies. My name is Dee. Thank you for joining me. I am so grateful that you are here. Welcome to the Virgo full moon forecast. This forecast is primarily for the Virgo sun, Virgo moon, Virgo rising folks, anyone with strong Virgo in any of the charts that they pay attention to. This forecast is going to go over the main astrological themes for the next 2 weeks, from full moon to our upcoming new moon in Pisces on the 10th of March. So Virgo folks, it doesn't stop with just this full moon. And the next new moon in the sign opposite of yours is going to have just as much of an impact. And in fact, there's going to be some pretty intense transits just in the next 2 weeks, just in the next 2 to 3 days from the recording of this video, that are going to have a very large impact on the Virgo people with the energy in Pisces, especially Virgo rising people, meaning that Pisces Pisces is your 7th house, which is the house of one-on-one relationships, contractual, committed relationships, and truly who you are as a person in those relationships. It's the mirror of relationship, whatever that relationship is, that brings out the polarity, the duality, which allows us to become whole, right? We have to see both sides of ourselves in order to integrate them into the whole being. And it's in relationship that we often get the reflection back to ourselves of who we are. So, and for the Virgo people, right, who you are in a relationship tends to give everything, right, to essentially release your own boundaries into the entirety of the relationship and become one with it, which is either amazing or turns out like martyrdom, right, where your boundaries go out the window. So we'll talk a lot about that as we get into the actual portion of the forecast that is for the Virgo folks. I know that the full moon happened yesterday. It's the 25th. It's Sunday, the 25th of February. I am fully aware that this forecast is a little bit late. The good news is that the full moon phase lasts for about 2.5 days. So if you are getting some heads up or just some insight into how I'm reading the full moon as a Virgo person, you being the Virgo person. I do not have sun, moon, or rising in Virgo, but I have a lot of really strong Virgo, not only in my natal chart, but some progressions, some family members. So I didn't realize just how powerful this Virgo energy right now really, really is. Wow. So I know that this is late, and there's a reason for that. As those of you who are on Subscribestar, you already know this. Even if you had listened to my last forecast, which was for the Aquarius new moon, right, Virgo, this is your 6th house, right? This is your house, Virgo, is the 6th house. We're going to talk about that too. For any of you, even if you listen to that forecast, you know, that's been a very terrible, yes, that is actually the word, terrible month. It has been the most challenging and the most heartbreaking month probably of my entire life, I'm pretty sure at this point, so far. Now, we buried a family member on Friday. So the fact that I was not really able to get myself to this point where I could do this forecast until today, that's why. So if you're looking for something polished and shellacked and completely devoid of the human experience, you may want to go find someone else. But at least here you're going to get raw, you're going to get real, and you're going to get those things coupled with the use of astrology as a tool in order to make sense of things that sometimes don't make any actual sense. So we're looking at the cosmic clock here. So what we're going to do here is we're going to start with some general themes. I'm going to talk about the full moon. It is in the zodiac sign of Virgo at its direct opposition to the sun in Pisces. That's what a full moon is. And do a little bit of retrospective in terms of the last day. We're going to talk about the fixed stars that the full moon is in relationship with. Look at it on the astronomy software because we have conjunctions, very close connection to the fixed star Regulus, which is one of the royal fixed stars. It is related to Archangel Gabriel. So there's also this very powerful illumination, culmination, revelation moment, as of all full moons are, with the heart of the lion and everything that kind of goes along with the archetype of Archangel Raphael, that there's blessings, there's miracles, there is healing, a healing of the heart, which is something that anybody who's gone through grief knows exactly, because it's not just figurative, it is a literal pain in the heart chakra area to go through experiences like this. So there's also the connection to the fixed star Thuban or Alpha Draconis. We're going to look at that on the astronomy software. So the first portion of this video is going to be focused more on the general themes, the fixed star energy, which is starseed energy, and then we'll move into the actual forecast itself for the Virgo people, looking at the Virgo rising chart. So there is truly something here for everyone, and if you're here for the Virgo portion, then you're in luck, because this whole video is for you. But if you just want to get some of the more general information, that's where we're going to start. So I actually want to bring up that software so that you can see what is actually going on in the living sky here. So this is my astronomy software. It came with my telescope, Celestron or Celestron, however you pronounce it, and so free software comes with it. I find this really helpful in terms of having an actual visual representation of what's going on. So this is late the 23rd into the 24th, so not quite up to the full moon itself, which was exact roughly 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on the 24th, which was yesterday, Saturday. And this is the moon, at least in where I'm at on the east coast of the U.S., would have already set by the time it was in its exact opposition with the sun, making it its 100% illumination. So this is a couple hours before, just so you can see so we can see that it's still up in the night sky, and you can see here that it's in the constellation of Leo. It is in the zodiac sign of Virgo. So if you're confused, especially if you're learning astrology or you're new to it, these are two different systems that are looking at the placements of the luminaries and the planets in relationship to either the constellations themselves, which you can see here go along the ecliptic, and they follow the same 12 zodiac signs, but in tropical or Western astrology, the circumference of what we look at in the night sky is on an astrology chart is created as an equal 360-degree circle. Each zodiac sign is a 30-degree portion of that space, and then we're looking at the position of the sky not in relationship to the actual constellations themselves. So these are two different systems that look at two different things, but they have their values. So when I say that the moon is in Virgo, it is in the zodiac sign of Virgo. It's in the portion of sky that is corresponded to Virgo, depending on where the vernal equinox is, right? The position of the vernal equinox relative to everything that you see in the sky changes, and every 2,000 years we go into a new portion of the sky. This is what precession is. So if you've heard that term, precession of the equinoxes. So the full moon might be in the zodiac sign of Virgo, and you can see here that it is in fact very close to this fixed star Thuban or Alpha Draconis in the Draco constellation. Thuban was the pole star thousands of years ago, and there's actually a shaft in the Great Pyramid of Giza that is directed at Thuban, or where Thuban would have been at the time, and along with Sirius, along with Orion's belt. These are all connections from the pyramids. Anyway, you can see that longitudinally, that, you know, from the up and down, the longitude, the full moon, and the fixed star Thuban or Alpha Draconis, they are conjunct. That's what we mean when we say conjunction in tropical astrology. They don't have to necessarily be lined up in their horizontal or latitude. As long as they are along that coordinate that is longitudinal, we call it a conjunction, because it's lined up relative to our view. But you can see that the full moon is actually, if I go over to the actual hover over it so that you can see that this is in fact fixed star Regulus right here, the heart of the lion. So let's make sure that you can actually, oh, maybe not. I don't know if you can see it, but it is right here just underneath. This is fixed star Regulus. So I'm going to go over a couple general ideas here about these fixed stars. But again, this is the constellation of Leo. These images, right, these stick figures and the portion of sky, they change based on precession. But the zodiac sign and that portion of the sky is always the same 30 degrees depending on where the vernal equinox. So if you can get an idea here of how these systems work. So the moon is in the constellation of Leo. It's in the portion of space that is Leo. Maybe I can show you that too. Because my goal here is not to just predict things and then you give me money to predict things. I'm here to show you how these systems work so that you can make sense of it on your own. I am not good at multitasking when it comes to the computer. I'll just tell you that right now. And many of you know that already. So, but I do want to show you, if we were to go to show you the portion of sky. Okay, boundaries. There we go. So you can see that in sidereal astrology, all the more lunar-based astrologies, they are looking at where things are placed in terms of these actual fixed star shapes, which are the constellations or asterisms. So it's in the portion of sky that is Leo, conjunct Regulus. So I'm going to bring the astrology chart itself back up now, and I'm going to talk a little bit about, well, actually what we're going to do is just leave this up so you can kind of peruse it if you so desire here. Okay. There we go. We can take the boundaries away. I can just show you where everything is situated. Okay, so I'm going to share some things with you about these fixed stars just from a general ancient astrology context, because these were focused on and mattered if they were in the natal chart. So there's a couple resources about fixed star astrology. Astrologyking.com, great resource, has all these fixed stars and has a write-up about each one from various different sources. Vivian Robson, Fixed Star Astrology. It's a book that you can get. It has a lot of all the same detail, and it's in book form. You can get it digitally. I'm sure you can download it from Internet Archive if you can find it for free or borrow it somewhere, but that's also a really good resource. I have that one as well for fixed stars. So first, let's talk about Regulus, because I think that it's a good way to start with some hope. And we've talked about this in the group on Subscribestar, those who are paying monthly members. I did the Wood Dragon, here we go, Year of the Wood Dragon. We did a presentation that's exclusive to those folks. Hi out there, those folks. Year of the Wood Dragon did an exclusive video about Chinese astrology, the general trends for the next year to expect, and Draco Starseeds, because Thuban or Alpha Draconis is the primary, it's really the only fixed star that designates a Draco Starseed connection. So we talked a lot about that too, and that has its own element connected to it, and it's more challenging. That's just all there is to it. People who have Draco Starseed stuff in their chart, which is many people that I work with, including myself, in different ways, if they have other relationships to Thuban, it still counts, but it's challenging to have it. It's powerful. It's very powerful, and requires a sense of discipline and mastery to be able to manage that power without it taking you over. And this full moon really highlighted the way, I think, to do that without it becoming something that you, like a mad scientist, basically, or the Draco reptilian archetype that we all in different ways know about, right? So, but the serpent, well, the dragon energy in particular, just like the Year of the Wood Dragon, it has all these elements related to it that are very, very powerful. And the wood element in 5-element theory is related to anger, right? And the liver, but also the color green and the season of spring, right? There's newness, there is a sense of initiation, but there is that anger there. So, and the wood dragon, the dragon in itself actually has an earth element component. So, the thing that gets you from anger to peace, because in 5-element theory, peace is related to the element of earth. In order to get there, you have to, one of the ways is to go through the heart. and joy in particular. And that can be very difficult when you are being overwhelmed by the experience itself of whatever it is that you're feeling in your heart. It can be joy, it can be mania, right? It could be exhilaration, but it also can be grief and sorrow. And anger is a part of that. And in order to get from anger to peace, there is a way to do that that is probably the least disruptive, but is the most difficult path. So, and again, we're talking about the heart of the lion here with Regulus. So there's hope, but there's also a necessity here to really be able to manage oneself, especially Draco people. So a family member that passed away at the beginning of the month. We had her service on Friday, and she had strong Draco connection. What can I say? So let me talk a little bit about these fixed stars. And you can go right to astrologyking.com and find all the information I'm about to share with you, okay? None of this is coming directly from my head. It is me just taking, notes from places. You're certainly encouraged to be doing your own research about all of these things. So Regulus, fixed star Regulus, or Alpha Leonis, it's a multiple star system in the heart of the lion, or the Leo constellation. So it's actually a quadruple star system of 4 stars that are organized into 2 pairs. And so when you look at it, though, it just looks like one star, but I'm sure if you get a powerful enough telescope, you'll be able to see that it's a quadruple star. So in Latin, Regulus is prince or little king, right? The heart in Arabic, heart of the lion. In Chinese, the yellow emperor. In Babylonian, it's the king. In Persian, the center, right? You getting the hint here, right? This is a very powerful star and had a lot of weight and significance in many cultures. The Watcher of the North, it marked the summer solstice in 3000 BC, which is also around the time, too, that the pole star was Alpha Draconis. So Regulus is associated with the healing Archangel Raphael, one of the 4 archangel stars characterized as the 4 horsemen, or just the 4 archangels that we know. So Raphael and Uriel and Michael and Gabriel. So Archangel Raphael is, like I said, associated with healing. In one of my decks, the Akashic Tarot deck, he is has a lot of green. He's holding a green orb, but the area over his heart chakra is pink, and a lot of times those 2 colors are interchangeable for the heart chakra itself. So there's healing here that is also being illuminated with this full moon. And so, but there is this very lion heart, little king type of energy that comes along with Regulus, but so there are 2 sides of this. You get military honors, but you also get success and high ideals, strength of spirit, right? And makes people, especially if you have this in your natal chart, magnanimous and generous and ambitious, but also fond of power and desirous of command, right? All these things that I think we can associate pretty easily with the energy of the lion, the heart of the lion, high-spirited, independent, but also there's violence, there's destructiveness, right? There's imprisonment, there's violent death, there's failure that goes along with this, because it's not, these energies may be associated with this particular star, and it's really, again, how we approach them and what else is going on around us that brings out the potential of the violence or the kind of attraction to power, and what also can be something that is very powerful and royal and regal in a lot of ways. Regulus has this energy to it. So it's also a Bohemian. There's 15 Bohemian fixed stars that have more of an alchemical component to them and is associated with things like granite and mugwort. And is also has an image of a lion or a cat or an honorable person seated in a chair, right? And it makes the person temperate and gives favor, appeases wrath. So there's a lot of turbulent, scandalous energy, but also high-spirited, independent, victory over enemies type of energy. Again, the heart of the lion. So this is where the full moon was the closest to yesterday, was to Regulus. So there is a lot of power that's going on here with this full moon. that is highlighting either the negative side of things, and perhaps people's desire of command and to be in control and to be ambitious and fond of power to the point where it's violent and destructive. Or there can be this incredible healing that goes along with it, and that's part of the success, and that's part of the ambition, and that's part of the independence, is a strong heart that, even being vulnerable and tender, in order to feel the full extent of things, and with a full moon you're definitely feeling it. And of course, Leo is ruled by the sun, so it is that energy, solar energy, illuminating the part of ourselves that is often in darkness, that is internal, that is sensitive, but is not highlighted or illuminated. So it's in these moments where we discover just how strong our heart is and what it is that motivates us to be successful with whatever it is. And so, for the Virgo person, you're getting right to the essence of who you are, right? Your actual personality, especially as a Virgo, well, certainly as a Virgo moon and a Virgo rising person, and even a Virgo sun, of course. This is getting right into the subjective experience of who you are as this energy, which is really great. And you also want to know where Virgo is in your chart if you're not a Virgo person. For me, it's the 7th and 8th house, right? And my North Node is there. So, as well as Saturn, right? And Saturn is opposite my Saturn right now. Like, this is really a huge test and a growing moment for me personally, and probably lots of people who have Saturn in Virgo that is, born around the same time I was. So if we go to fixed star Thuban, though, you're going to see a little bit of a different energy. This is in the tail of the dragon, or the Draco constellation, being, and even though it's the alpha star, it's really not the brightest in the constellation, which is pretty interesting. And the traditional and official name Thuban is derived from the Arabic word large snake, or the legendary draconian serpent. It is sometimes known as the dragon's tail. And this is really interesting in this particular, on this website, which is Astrology King. He actually references David Icke, which I am fully prepared to I'm still on the fence about him, like, to this day. Like, he's never sat well with me, but I also understand and value what he does. So according to British conspiracy theorist David Icke, Alpha Draconis is the origin of blood-drinking, shape-shifting reptilians who lurk in underground bases on Earth and plot against humanity with the aid of powerful figures, including royalty. Oh, that's interesting. But so take it for what it is, but this is the Draco energy being brought into a very materialistic form, right? The idea that they're actual beings, that they live here, that they are blood drinking, shape shifting, that they're here, they're plotting against us. Just that's the Draco energy. So whether or not you ascribe that to being a Draco starseed and having that dragon bloodline, that's up to you, and that's between you, yourself, and Great Spirit to figure out what's true. But it is the Draco energy that's coming from here, and it's very powerful. And I'm going to share some things about, there's a very artistic aspect to this energy. And where fixed star Thuban is in particular in the sign of Virgo. So there's a lot of creativity, idealism, good fortune, unexpected gains, right? This particular star, again, was the pole star 3,000 years ago, and was called the Judge of Heaven during the reign of the first king of Akkad. So it can be seen from the bottom of the central passage of the Great Pyramid. So there's a depth of character when you have Thuban in your astrology chart, and there's artistic skills, like I said, and a passion for all the arts, actually. So creativity as a whole is a huge part of fixed star Thuban, or the Draco starseed. Living a life where your talents are regularly seen and heard is a pathway offered here. Singing, writing, leadership, even preaching, right? There's probably a lot of Draco starseeds who are preachers, are all promising with Thuban in your chart, right? But it also indicates a hard time, right? There is a very dark side to this, especially with family, right? Situations where a lack of understanding and compromise spoil the mood for reconciliation. Although with patience, the Thuban star energy will take over. Again, this is astrologyking.com. These are not my words. On all love connections grow due to the love connections grow due to the complications. But on the shadow side of the star's energy, if it's used negatively, as with, you can imagine with the Draco energy used negatively, it can backfire, right? Especially if you're not trying, if you're kind of using it in a very personalized, petty way, it doesn't go well. If your intentions are not honest and forthcoming, and anger sets in. And boy, isn't that interesting that we're in the year of the wood dragon. So it's like all of these natural connections to these fixed stars are getting amplified by other aspects of, time and where we are in this cycle, right? So an anger sets in, creating mistakes and broken promises. Be sure to handle all things in this time calmly with gratitude. Yes, remind yourself the universe is testing you and act accordingly. Caught in a pattern of forces over which we have no control and are restless for change, this energy is best focused on analyzing the current situation. Now that is a Virgo trait in and of itself. Now we're talking about fixed star Thuban, but it is in the sign of Virgo currently. So talking about analyzing the situation, it's very much related to Virgo, the analysis. Travel opportunities and finances are favored if other people are included. Just don't be a slave to the addiction of emotional highs and lows, since this will isolate and divide, right? So this is a pretty intense energy in and of itself. There's a lot of power here, and there is a need to use it appropriately without any type of, I don't want to say ego attached, but a sense of greediness or using that energy to manipulate or control other people, right? Especially if you're being dishonest and not forthcoming, then there's an anger that sets in. And when that anger sets in, again, if there is no way for that anger to be channeled through some sort of joy or at least some sort of authenticity, which does require being honest and forthcoming, then there is no real peace. And I think this is where you see where the Draco energy can so easily go sideways, to the point where people conceptualize it as actual beings that are, all of the things that David Icke talks about. So in my opinion, it doesn't, and I've asserted this from the beginning with the fixed or the starseed work, it doesn't matter if you attach yourself to it as a material experience or not, because it all has the same frequency and resonance within each of us, because these stars are emitting light that has a frequency and a wavelength that influences us in a specific geometric pattern at the moment we are born. So caught in a pattern of forces over which we have no control and restless for change. Now, this is a great segue, actually, into the nature of this full moon and where the sun is in Pisces in particular. So without this sense of being really identified with something more than ourselves, a responsibility to be a member of a community and to take care of the community. It's only with that we are able to have an objective approach to this intensity of energy, our own hearts, and what we are doing with that energy. And that is the 5th and 6th house in astrology, right? The 5th house is your play, your joy, your exhilaration, your creative expression. That can be grief and sorrow. That can be anger, right? That can be any range of emotions. It's about the emotions being expressed, how we put them to use, how they function within our own self and are put to a creative use that is palpable and physical. That's Virgo in the 6th house. So we are being tested here. And this full moon, it started with an Aquarius new moon. That Aquarius new moon that asked, are we going to be able to develop some resiliency in the face of emotional crises? And that's, of course, we all have to approach that ourselves. But for the Virgo person, That's your sixth house. That is your work on yourself, is being able to find that emotional resiliency in the face of real adversity, right? Being able to look up and have a courageous outlook, even being disappointed or disillusioned or just, completely blasted apart emotionally. Okay, let me find my Virgo glyph. So now that you know, we're now on to the portion that is directed at the Virgo folks, specifically the Virgo rising chart. That is what we're looking at. So what is one of the first things you notice, Virgo, here, just in general? We'll go through the next 2 weeks, is that most of the action is in the first 3 houses at the top of your chart, which is social identity, right? Now you do have, Venus and Mars were just in a conjunction in your 6th house. Pluto is now in your 6th house, right? I mean, there's some real, powerful change happening at the level of your disciplines, your work, right? What are you doing on the daily? Like, where, if the 2nd house is structure, the 6th house is function, right? So if you think about anatomy and physiology, right, the structure and the function, 6th house is the functionality in real time, in a very material way, because Virgo is it's mutable, but it's still an earth sign. But there's change that can happen, right? Just like in nature, things are malleable and shifting and growing and changing all the time. Just like the root system in a plant is now drawing the materials. It's that the root system is functioning now. It is drawing the material that it needs out of the soil in order to support the plant. Doing what? Growing the fruit, right? The gestation period. It requires discipline. It requires analysis. It requires order and a willingness to really reconstitute yourself. The 6th house is not easy. And I thought the Aquarius people were getting hit hard, and with the new moon, absolutely, because it's something that couldn't be anticipated. Uranus does rule Aquarius. It's something that is outside of the box. It's something that has been naturally growing. But this full moon, as in all full moons, brings it home. It is a beginning in full consciousness. And Virgo, I mean, I think you're realizing it's in the person you are, specifically, that you give into relationship that is really going to matter, especially when we get to the next new moon, which will be in Pisces, very close to Neptune, which is the ruling planet of Pisces. So big change for you, Virgo, especially with Pluto now in Aquarius. But even just that conjunction with Venus and Mars that just happened, I talked a lot about it in the weekly for the subscribers, so they know all about it. But even Mercury now, which is your chart ruler or your planetary ruler as a Virgo person, is even now in Pisces in your 7th house. It's all about relationship now. It's all about relationship, the form of that relationship, the power that is generated in those relationships, and the purpose and meaning of those relationships. And we're going to talk a lot in the next time, the amount of time that it takes to do this forecast, about the squares that are coming even just in the next 2 weeks, with the Aquarian energy down here in the 6th house to the 9th house of belief, of purpose, of meaning, of relationship. Belief systems are the 9th house. Higher education is in the 9th house, right? Jupiter loves to be in the 9th house, by the way, Virgo. I think you've been probably really feeling that expansiveness, that wisdom, that big picture energy in the 9th house. But then you've also had Uranus really making, rapid shifting and changing of what you do believe, and going through massive overhauls of purpose and meaning, and the squares with what you're doing on the daily, and those big changes in purpose and meaning are going to continue to impact each other over the next 2 weeks, right? The squares that are coming with Mars and Venus to Jupiter, right? And the 6th house is you and your disciplines, your works, your service, your labors, your healing. The 6th house is where we get our shit together. And Virgo people know all about that, because that is like their MO, their modus operandi. If you're a Virgo identified person, then you are identified with getting your shit together, organizing stuff, being meticulous, to the point of being anal retentive and controlling. That can be it too. The challenge for the Virgo person is to be able to tap into the collective consciousness. That is Aquarius, right? And to take yourself out of the equation. Because you have to, because when you're in relationship, especially as a Virgo rising, the self is dissolved into the relationship, which is incredibly powerful. And the healing capacity for Virgo people, to be healers, right, is very strong, especially Virgo rising. But it also, and to be so compassionate and empathic in your one-on-one relationships and inspired by them. But you also have to, you know, realize that you still do exist as a person. And that is, I think, one of the biggest challenges, is that Virgo people are so focused on service, being of service in many ways, that in relationship there can be a martyrdom where you lose yourself. So, and that's going to be something that comes with the new moon, and really trusting how it actually physically feels in these relationships. And Mercury being here, you're learning more about yourself from relationship than you're learning from anything else that you're doing. So the full moon is 5 to 6 degrees Virgo. That means the sun is 5 to 6 degrees Pisces. And as I talked about, it's in the identification of being this person, being dedicated to the service of your community, right? This is the expression. This is where the illumination is. This is where, you're really sustained by your relationships and playing this role, right? And it doesn't mean you also just give yourself to the service of your community. The flip side of this degree, which is a parade of army officers in full dress, is they're not in a parade that's empty of people. There is an emotional sustaining factor of the people at the parade, right? You have a military parade and they go down the street in their officers' uniforms, and the people are praising them and giving them emotional sustenance for doing their service, right? This is it's necessary, it's cyclic, it's an intensification of the personal being as part of something more than themselves. And you're investing yourself in the long range potential of life as a whole, right? And there may be something immediate or self-fulfilling in terms of your own skill or capacity that is required, and discipline, absolutely. But there's a responsibility, but there's also an assurance that you will putting yourself out there, being of service and dedicated to the community, will be emotionally sustained, and it'll be experienced for the Virgo people in your one-on-one relationship. And I think that this is where that Draco energy, along with Regulus, it's very healing, but it also intensifies the experience in and of itself of the energy that moves through us. It's a release of life energy, and it does allow for the demonstration of our own skill and mastery. And I feel like that this is the way. Right? We started out with this new moon in Aquarius. It was like this woman who, like I said, is completely disillusioned and disappointed, but courageously faces that situation, not really knowing, how it's going to resolve. Well, this is one of those moments with the full moon of like, oh, I feel so strongly within myself how this can be resolved. And whatever that is. But it's in the fact that you can give yourself, knowing that it will return to you. And that's the cycle of the Kundalini. That's the cycle of the dynamic intensity of these processes, that the Draco and the dragon energy is incredibly creative. And one of the ways I've explained it in the past to people when I do starseed readings for them about the Draco is that, they are these master, if you want to think about it materially as actual beings, that they do have this mastery over the genetic process of mastering. And the dragon energy throughout cross-culturally throughout mythologies has this incredible ability to release life energy. And that is the case in Chinese philosophy too, when you just look at the dragon in Chinese astrology, like this incredible amount of power and creativity. There's somewhere for it to go. And our ability to be able to emotionally handle this intense energy moving through us can come through the experience of identifying with this process of, like, when we're dedicated to each other, then it's a flow and it's a cycle, and that which we put out, we take back in, right? And it is there, but we also have to be responsible. And there is a discipline that goes along with that. So, whew, Virgo people, my Lord. This is really setting the stage for something relationship wise in the next 2 weeks. And then we hit eclipse season and the vernal equinox very soon. So there's about to be a lot of very dynamic energy coming. And we talked about that in the year of the wood dragon. So the things that we're going to see, like I said, there's two main things that I want to point out. Number one is that there's going to be these squares from Venus and Mars to Jupiter, the 6th and the 9th house square. And it's fixed, right? You're talking about fixed air with Aquarius and fixed earth with Taurus. So when these energies come into square, there's not a lot of wiggle room, right? But also too, this is where it really kind of pushes us in a new direction, especially when it comes to what is being changing deeply in terms of your work, right? Your service, your labors, your healing, your self-care, like disciplines, your practices. That's what the 6th house is too. It's the functionality of our resources through our cognition, right? This is why Mercury also rules Virgo and the 6th house, as well as Gemini and the 3rd house. So crunching the numbers, putting one foot in front of the other, your day in and day out daily activity. That's what's changing for the Virgo people recently. And this is with Mars and Venus having that conjunction very, very recently, like something brand new, something coming out of the cosmic egg, so to speak, has just been initiated and activated with that conjunction. But each of them in turn are going to square Jupiter in your 9th house of belief system, of the meaning of the relationship, right? And so let's look at that. So that comes, so right now we're at the 25th, and we're going to go a couple days ahead because that's the 27th. So the moon will move through the 1st house. It's Sunday. It's going to be at its lunar apogee, which means the moon will be further away, furthest from Earth than it usually is. And then we get to the 27th, and we're going to have Mars first and foremost. Well, actually, no. Venus will have already squared Jupiter as of the full moon. So that's last night into today. Let's find this. Because this is actually this type of transit, Venus squaring Jupiter, actually does get our... does kind of get our stuff together. And it's, these are two benefic planets. And so let me find my notes here. There we go. Venus square Jupiter. This actually, these squares, of course, are just like, squares, 90-degree angles, cross purposes. And they usually are not something you can just get out of, right? You lean into them and you're like, wow, that's uncomfortable. Now what? And that's where a lot of the growth happens. So these are two benefic planets. Venus and Jupiter are traditionally known to be more beneficial. So when these two are in a square, it's usually ideal for having fun, not working so hard though. And you should be feeling happy and optimistic and generous and friendly, right? If you have to attend to more serious matters, it can be a little bit difficult, but this is a great opportunity to make new friends, to be more social, and to be, you don't want to lower your standards, right? You don't want to get so into the square necessarily that anything to socialize and make new friends, you actually kind of lower your standards, having a wrong choice or an embarrassing situation. But for the most part, it's actually a really good square to be having. Now, what is 11 degrees of Taurus? Well, that's a woman watering her flowers. It's cultivating the garden that is your own mind, right? That comes from a process of having to do that. 11 degrees Aquarius, let's see here. I think what that has to do with, if I remember correctly, during a silent hour, a person receives a new inspiration which may change their life. The need to rely upon inner stuff. Now, here's the thing. Jupiter is about the big picture, right? It's expansive. There's a little bit of reining it in here because in Taurus, that is very fixed earth. That is very palpable and doesn't allow for a lot of expansion beyond what it what it normally would expand into, right? Jupiter's like hot air, and Taurus is the soil. So there's only so much, there's only so much that can, that hot air can go into. But what I will say, being in the ninth house for the Virgo person, I mean, it is kind of holding this wisdom of the natural environment and the resources and the value and the meaning that is implicit in relationship and the social wealth. And so there is some wisdom here in terms of the bigger picture, and to just kind of be focused on that. It's all about, cultivation. But, there's more to that, and we are open to receiving inspiration that is outside of just what we are cultivating within our own self. And Venus in the sixth house often will take the edge off more difficult situations and give this feeling of hope and warmness and meaning and value. That's the thing. Venus does rule Taurus, so she is very aware over there of how important it is to be connected directly to the earth, and in the process of cultivating a healthy and bountiful garden of the mind, right? It's like Mr. Rogers talking about the garden of the mind, right? But there is also a need, Virgo, I would say, with Venus here. It's kind of drawing back to, well, there is a need to tap into that inspiration, to that place that is beyond just the physical, tangible world that we do work with, and I think it just comes from the idea that you still cultivate relationships, but at the same time, you are giving yourself the ability to stay open to inspiration, like that there's something there that is also valuable in terms of your, and that might be, that something practical there could be like, I need to carve out space for me to sit in meditation or in prayer in order to receive, right? It's great to continue to cultivate your belief systems, right? With Jupiter, especially Jupiter in the ninth house, cultivating belief systems, and being able to nourish them and water them. But Venus is like, hey, but in your own body, in your own practice, you also have to leave space for actual direct inspiration. So that square, the thing is about socializing. I feel like that you don't have to push people away, but you have to carve this space out. So hopefully that's already been done. And I know for me personally, I'm not the Virgo rising person, but I can feel this energy as a whole in different areas of my chart. So Venus comes into that square with Jupiter, and then Mars 2 days later, which it looks like it's going to be Tuesday. So Sunday is the 25th, and we go to the 27th, and we're going to see that Mars coming into the square with Jupiter is interesting, because this, strangely enough, you'd think like, the warrior, and then, the leader or the philosopher, right? The teacher, the professor. You'd think that them being in square would be really detrimental. And in some ways, they kind of rein each other in with the square, so that they don't, that Jupiter's not endlessly just expanding into the big picture without any details, right? And beliefs without knowledge, because that's where the dichotomy of Mercury and Jupiter is like, if you're just in belief, that's how you get pulled into cults and things like that. This is where you get pulled into religious doctrine without any direct knowledge of that experience for yourself. Anyway, so when Mars and Jupiter are square, they actually are kind of reining in the spontaneous kind of projection of self, and this endless expansion of belief system into something that gives you energy, initiative to start something and to take risks at a larger scale. And it is impulsive. It can be a little bit tactless, and so you could find yourself kind of acting rashly, especially in, you'd be like, no, just pushing people away. I need to carve this space out. There's such a strong projection of self into this practice of just like, I need to rely upon inner inspiration. And so you could you could act rashly without considering the consequences, but it also gives a lot of courage to take on a defensive position if you are feeling threatened in some way by people or just the overwhelming of negative thoughts, for instance. This does give energy and initiative to start something new, and maybe this is exactly, you get a sense, oh, okay, there's a meaning and a value and a necessity that I'm feeling, that to carve this space out in my practice, or to carve out this space in my everyday life somehow, to receive inner inspiration and guidance, because there is something new that is developing. Absolutely. And then Mars is like the initiative to actually do it, to have the courage to be bold, maybe a little tactless. It's not a good time to go on the attack, and I don't feel that is necessarily happening anyway with the degrees that the degrees and the signs that they're in. But there can be provocation and getting into fights that will not go well. And so it's normal to feel enthusiastic and pumped up about things, and you need to the thing is to moderate your energy, right? You don't want to completely give up on watering those belief systems and that wisdom and the larger, broader horizons, right? I mean, that's ninth house as well as like foreign travel, broadening your horizons. And you have to, if you want your mind and the physical nature of your being to be broad and to encompass a big picture or horizon, then you have to continue to nurture that as well. So you don't want to give up on those things, right? You don't want to just like push everything out to the point where you're just like, it's just me in silence in my practice, and I'm not gonna nurture or cultivate anything in terms of social value and meaning and purpose. And that easily can happen with this too. So just, you want to moderate your energy output. You don't want to burn yourself out. You don't want to exhaust yourself. And certainly you don't want to just push everything away, because Virgo, again, look at all the energy in your chart. If you're really struggling with this Pisces 7th house, Virgo, because of Mercury being here, the sun being here, Saturn being here, this is the time right now to start really getting a sense of mastery over who you are in relationship, because I do feel like that there's going to be some, again, especially when we get to the new moon and then get into eclipse season after that, there's going to be some stuff going on for you in relationship that you're going to really need to know where you end and what you're dedicated truly to. And these squares from Aquarius, the 6th house, which is your disciplines and practices, into the purpose and meaning of the relationships that you're part of, I think this is a good place to lean into even when it's uncomfortable, right? So next, on the 28th, we have this triple conjunction in Pisces. And again, for the Virgo rising people, this is the house of relationship, one-on-one relationship. So things like marriages or any type of domestic partnership that's contractual, something you are committed to, right? So it can be loved ones, it can be really close friends, it can be an employer, or as an employer, your employees, your clients, right? Anybody you do business with, the transactional relationship as it stands, the scales of Libra, it can be the social contract. It can be your relationship to whatever you are spiritually connected and aligned with. This is who you are in that relationship. So this triple conjunction with your chart ruler or your ruling planet, Mercury, the sun in your 7th house, and certainly Saturn here, is really drawing a lot of attention and energy into this area. So on the 28th, there's this triple conjunction. So first it's the Cazimi, which is Mercury conjunct the sun, and then Mercury will come and conjunct Saturn, and then the sun and Saturn will meet up in the same whole degree, which is 10 degrees Pisces, 9 to 10 degrees Pisces. An aviator pursues his journey flying through ground obscuring clouds, right? So this is a pilot, an aviator going up, and anybody that's flown, you know what this experience is. You go up through the clouds and then you're over top of them, and that's all it is. It's just you and the sky, and you don't have a view of what's going on down on Earth, okay? So general themes here with this degree. It's the ability to develop the power and the skills, which by transcending natural limitations, which would be Taurus, allows one to operate in those higher mental, spiritual realms, right? In the realm of compassion and unconditional love and forgiveness. These are all the Pisces themes. In the Bardo, right? That's the other way of looking at it. And certainly in the realm of the muse, right? Where we become inspired. The dream state, that's also a big part of Pisces, right? Time doesn't exist. Material boundaries are gone in Pisces. It is the primordial soup. It is the plasma. It is the ether that pervades all of our universe and dimension of experience. So when you are able to transcend the natural limitations, there's a sense of mastery here, right? It's not that you're not connected. It's not that you aren't living at the same time in that duality. And in fact, there's going to be relationship to this aspect of being very much embroiled in the duality and having the capacity to transcend that while still being in the body. But this Mercury conjunct the sun, of course, is, the light bulb going off. It is the conversations getting more, just getting brighter. There's more communication that's happening. Your mental energy gets brighter, things like that. And in the seventh house, I mean, it definitely is about, getting to this point in terms of relationship, Virgo, where you are observing, you have mastered yourself in the context of these relationships. And there is real competence in judgment and long-range planning, right? There's something here, Virgo, about relationship that you're going to get this like triple whammy of like responsibility, identity, and your own sense of mental capacity around these things that you're going to be like, whoa. Mercury conjunct Saturn, same degree, okay? So Mercury and the sun are like, ta-da, right? It's very brightening influence. And again, like I said, when the sun and Mercury are in a seventh house, you learn a lot. You're very identified with the relationship, because it's drawing out that balance within you. And so now Mercury meeting Saturn in this house, and certainly in this sign, and just in general, it brings critical thinking to a very challenging situation. Without something productive for your mind, this is very easy to get caught in a karmic trap or a rut. Negative thinking that can lead to depression, okay? If you are struggling in terms of being able to transcend the limitations of the relationships you're in, and being able to transcend them in your own mind and in your own heart, I mean, you definitely get drugged down. And so, getting mired in the experience emotionally and otherwise of what myself and my family have been going through, if you can't pull yourself out of that, then this can easily lead into depression and very difficult communications. Harsh or critical words can lead to a relationship problem. There can be isolation and rejection. So the key to dealing with a Mercury conjunct Saturn, it's heavy thoughts. It is heavy thinking. Is to counteract that completely, the positive thinking and applying your brain to things that are really important for you to do, right? So go back down to routine duties. There's that sixth house for you, Virgo, and what you need to do in order to bring yourself back to that place, right? Keeping yourself busy will counteract the tendency toward melancholy and even being mean. So you have to be able to manage yourself. You have patience and discipline with yourself in your day-to-day activities to keep you on the straight and narrow as the thinking and the responsibility in relationship becomes very heavy. So this is a good time if you need to have sustained concentration on anything, if you need patience, you need sound judgment, this is great transit for something like that. A common sense approach, attention to detail, again, long-term outlook, right? There's another reference to that here in this astrology, is long-term outlook, right? If you can't get into the long game here of what it's all about for you in your life, in your relationships, who you are, how you're growing and developing, then it can be very difficult to have the long, to sustain yourself through the difficult times. Serious discussions about hardships in life can lead to useful outcomes, right? Speaking out, or finding an outlet to give voice to those who often don't have a voice. You could be a mentor with a Mercury conjunct Saturn, especially in your 7th house. You could find yourself being this person for people in your life, but there is a potential to get into arguments with other authority figures. So, just having a sense of respect for tradition, for ancestors, just for some empathy for people in your life with the the Pisces energy. And then you have the sun. This is all the same day. And then you have the sun meeting Saturn. It means you stand up and be counted. There's hard work, there's discipline, there's patience. You may have to take on extra responsibility or act as a mentor, right? Again, Virgo, in your relationships. I mean, the Virgo energy is the hermit. The hermit goes into hermitude not to bypass society, but to be completely intrinsically strong and masterful, so that going out into relationship with anybody, the hermit is the master, right? This can be a time of very great satisfaction. So you have this Mercury conjunct Saturn, you have Sun conjunct Saturn, and certainly Mercury and the Sun together. So there's a lot of potential achievement, recognition, promotion, but there's also time of deprivation and insecurity and hardship, just like I said. So there's going to be people who they've been putting the work in, and they're going to see some results, and other people, there's going to be a lot of hardship and deprivation. And maybe those things are happening simultaneously. And it's really going to depend on your diligence and responsibility, especially over the last year. We're talking about the sun, which is a solar, the solar pathway. So if things start to fall apart, it might be a signal to change course and set new goals. That's absolutely, and I'm talking about being able to master oneself. I think, if you have not figured out at this point that this year is going to, challenge everyone in the way that I and my family are currently being challenged, the astrology should be telling you that there is all of these potentials and opportunities to make the most and be able to transcend. And for the Virgo person, it's going to come right to the nature of who you are and who you are in your direct one-on-one relationships, right? And they may be the source of sadness. I mean, my gosh, when you have Pisces here in your 7th house, you're feeling everything, not just what you're feeling, but you're feeling what they're feeling. That is true empathy. So it can be a source of sadness, especially if people have a hard time. If you are not expressing yourself, Virgo, and you're just like taking it all on, it's gonna drive the point home, this triple conjunction. Isolation and coldness are possible, but things can work out well if others realize you are dependable and trustworthy, and that you also know how to take care of yourself. You could act as a rock for someone or be looked up to because of your stability and wisdom, okay? Structures in your life may need attending to. Again, this triple conjunction is going to make it really clear what structures need attending to, if at all. And this can be your physical home, but for Virgo, it's your relationships. Straight up, it is who you are in these relationships, right? Because whether you're sun, moon, or rising, these are all personally identified with I am, or I feel, or expressing I am. So it's a good time to simplify your life, Virgo. Unclutter your life, especially relationships that are just like, and somebody actually said that I know for a fact has the Virgo full moon, their natal moon is where the full moon was, and that's something that they talked about. They were like, yep, based on things that they've experienced, they're ready to start cutting it out. A good time to, unclutter the friends lists on social media, because when it came down to it, it was just like, wow, that is not worth my time anymore. Remove the dead wood to make your goals less complicated. So that triple conjunction on the 28th is a huge deal, especially for the Virgo and Pisces people. So that's Wednesday. There's some sextiles now with Mercury and Jupiter, like all the Pisces energy, there are sextiles. So that's not only Mercury, but Jupiter. I'm sorry, not only Mercury, but the sun in turn will also sextile. And sextiles are 60-degree angles. They show a place where there is a buildup of energy that needs to be released, and that often can be harmoniously released in a way that provides actual inner transformation. So when you talk about Mercury and Jupiter, which are planets that are in opposite signs, when they're in this relationship, there is a lot of really good things that can come out of it, right? Again, long-term planning, thinking about the future, broad outlook. And again, your ruling planet, Virgo, with Mercury in your 7th house. I mean, there is a, I think there's kind of an examination of who in your life and who these people bring out in you. Like if they're really qualified to take you to where you are now visualizing you want to go in terms of meaning and value, right? So broad outlook, really good decision-making skills, allows you to visualize your preferred path. And positive thinking associated with this transit is, I mean, it's very ideal looking ahead. So there's good communication skills, being able to openly express yourself, making friends comes easier with something like this. So if you are really, kind of tapping into visualizing the preferred path, Virgo, for relationships in general, I think that you're going to see, you're going to naturally kind of be drawn into those situations, or be attracted to or drawn into people who you do want to be friends with or friendly with, or the type of people, right? You can count on diplomacy and tact in your communications. Like it's not a type of communicating that is that where it's adversarial, right? It's good for debating and negotiating and signing contracts. Like you're visualizing the long-term big picture of what it is that you want, and you have the mental capacity to analyze and to learn about who is really going to bring out the best of you in those relationships, and bring out what you're visualizing and what you're desiring in terms of the purpose and meaning in these relationships. So there's a lot about planning, setting out on a vacation, being able to have long range planning for your future is very favored with this, and there can be a lot of transformation. If you let it build up though and you don't do anything about it, that's where comes into problems. So, and while this is happening, the moon, of course, for the Virgo person is moving through the first 3 houses. So, Virgo, you're definitely feeling into those very basics of identity until we get to their 3rd quarter moon, which is, the 4th house. So, and every time the 3rd quarter moon is happening in the 4th house of the people who the full moon was in their sign. So, especially the rising sign. So the sun also is in a sextile with Jupiter, which is optimism and good luck and happiness. So you're getting the same kind of energy. Mercury for the Virgo person allowed you to really analyze this, and the sun is just like, what? Like, I'm feeling pretty optimistic about this. I'm feeling very positive. I feel like that there is a lot of potential and fortune. This is one of the most fortunate transits in astrology, Sun sextile Jupiter. So this is an ideal time to reach your goals, and there's very little resistance here. And people will be very generous and hospitable, especially Virgo rising people with the Sun in your 7th house, Jupiter in the 9th house. I mean, there will be a lot of Jupiter-like people, like judges, authority figures, people who are, teachers and mentors and things like that. They will be very generous and helpful, I think, in terms of really getting you to where you want to go in relationship. Growth and experience can be material, it can be spiritual. There are opportunities, right? Other means to expand your horizons, Jupiter, especially in your 9th house, should turn out to be successful. Things like further education, long distance travel, right? Such things turn out to be successful with this transit, and favors group activities. This is a very welcome shift. Although it can be difficult if you're having a hard time letting go of the dead wood, if you know what I mean. And I'm not saying that you need to be totally rash. That goes back to that Mars squaring Jupiter, where you're like, you know what? I don't want anything to do with any of you people. Whatever that means for you. So the 3rd, we're going to come into the 3rd of March. Now we're coming into March, okay? And Venus is going to square Uranus, Venus in the sixth house. Now, this is a mutual reception because Uranus rules Aquarius and Venus rules Taurus. So it's a little less like jarring than it normally would be because they understand each other in the square. We're also getting the third quarter square pretty much on the same day, almost at the same time, right? The sun and the moon are in a square to each other, the moon being in the Virgo fourth house in Sagittarius. Now, Sagittarius moon is usually something most people look forward to. So here's the thing, Virgo, your strength, your core, your emotional stability is something you're going to feel deeply into. And the square to the sun is going to really challenge, like, yeah, but, you know, I'm really identified with relationship. Like, I really tap into that transcendental self in the relationship. And this is really going to challenge, it's going to be an ideological crisis at this moment of like, okay, so, you know, I feel and I'm very sensitive to this deep seed knowledge, these ancestors, this spiritual ancestry that goes back beyond what I know. And the sun's still in your seventh house of like, I'm really sustained by the relationship. This is what I think also to the Venus square Uranus, this day, March 3rd, 3-3. I get the sense here, Virgo, that a real shift in belief system is going to really challenge you, and especially challenge on where your core really lies. Like, where is your emotional stability, as opposed to, you know, being able to modulate yourself in terms of the relationship, if that makes sense, right? Because the meaning and purpose of that relationship, when you talk about Uranus, it's going to shift that landscape, and that can be a full-on crisis of belief when Uranus is involved. But it also is revolutionary, and it's conversion almost, right? So maybe this will shift the landscape a lot in terms of that, and will really deeply it will trigger an ideological crisis, but in some ways it'll also be like, oh yeah, this is where, you know, I can dig, I don't even have to dig, I just have to allow myself to tap into this core power, this strength, right? Because moon in Sagittarius is all about our strength, you know, tap into the strength that is timeless, even though you have this capacity in some ways to just like, you know, subtly hide yourself within the context of your relationship. I don't think it'll be as easy as that with Venus in a square to Uranus, especially because a Venus-Uranus square, if we're talking relationships in general, and we are for you, Virgo, it can really test the stability of those relationships. There's unexpected urges or events, there's sudden change in your affections and loyalties, an increased need for freedom and excitement can test your patience with a loved one, right? And you might lash out if you're feeling confined and bored. And if you try to resist this urge for change, it's going to come out regardless. And so you got to find ways to entertain yourself, to amuse yourself, especially if you're feeling like stepping out on someone, which could very well be the case here with Venus. Because the discipline in your relationships your own discipline in relationships will come from your sixth house, and Uranus in, you know, the ninth house is the purpose of those, the meaning and the catalyzing alchemical fire in those relationships. That's what the ninth house is. So there is a strong potential here to have the wandering eye and to feel smothered or confined, and you may be attracted to new, exciting, eccentric people and those who seem risky, right? A new romance is possible, but it's likely to be brief. So take care of yourself, because there's a real potential here with this ideological crisis to just kind of mold and just kind of hide yourself in the relationship. I just don't see that being as easy as all that with this Venus square Uranus. I see that there's going to be unexpected change that's going to trigger people into wanting to lash out or break free or something to that extent. You know, there's a couple more sextiles, but we don't, you know, the last two real transits that I want to talk about before we close out here today is the 8th. We're getting towards the balsamic moon. So you can see that over the next couple of days, it continues to be, the moon is getting closer and closer to this transition over into, you know, relationship land. Right now, the moon is moving through all the houses that have to do with you, your identity, your individual identity and expression. It's soon going to, especially with the new moon in Pisces, it's going to take you into the fully emotionally connected to the relationships. Right now, you're getting some time to really feel into who you are. So when that time comes, you're ready to set intentions with the new moon in Pisces. So, but on the 8th, what we're going to see is that Mercury and Neptune are going to come into a conjunction in your 7th house. Now, 28 degrees Pisces, the fertile garden under the full moon. It really, so Mercury and Neptune together like this, just not even in Pisces, focuses your thinking and communication on things like the mysteries, secrets, spiritual topics, right? Spirituality, the transcendental. It could be ideal to study arts, and there's very enhanced imagination and creativity, and there's very valuable insight that can be gained through the practices that are associated with the metaphysical, right? So dreaming and meditation, prayer, practicing astrology, whatever your own practices are. This is a really good time to take what is often completely nebulous out there in the ether, and especially for Virgo people, bring it right back to the sense of like, okay, how do I analyze this and make sense of it, right? You may become involved, though, in something secret or intrigue, and where it is essential to maintain your high moral standard, okay? Because the other side of all of this is that, your mind becomes completely undifferentiated, formless, and nebulous, right? It's just things passing over the barrier here right into your sense of who you are and how, you project yourself into the world, with Mercury being your chart ruler. It can also impact your thinking and communication, both positively and negatively, just like I said. So, in the best case scenario, it gives very accurate perception at the psychic level, unbiased processing of this spiritual information. Like, you're just getting the information in its pure, unadulterated form, but it's also very clear to you. You can express these insights through compassionate or supportive words, but the negative side of this transit, especially when we're talking about the full satisfaction of the individual's basic needs, 28 Pisces, in the negative, there's so much thoughts and words so many thoughts and words twisted by misconception, by irrationality, by confusion, by fear. It can be really hard for a person that is going through loss to feel like everything that you need is actually right here, especially in relationship. And there is a lot of confusion and fear, paranoia, irrationality, and that leads to very, very underhanded, poisonous, deceitful types of relationships. This is just as possible as the positive aspect of like, wow, like you're getting a direct line into spirit, to your soul, being like, everything you need in relationship is right here. So there's a very, very positive moment here, and the potential for absolute delusion in terms of relationship, right? Just, somebody just lying to you, and believing the lies and thinking like, oh, everything I need is right here, and it being just not, just being twisted. So that, and that has a lot to do with your own mind when we're talking about Mercury here, Virgo, and the way that you utilize that. So, and then Mars is going to square Uranus, right? We just talked about how these squares to Uranus are happening, and that's the last big one before we come to the new moon on the 10th. So Mars squares Uranus, and Venus already did that. We just talked about how that type of energy on the 3rd quarter moon is really powerful. And yes, it's a mutual reception. And so you really have to be willing to see the spiritual forces at work and know how to recognize within your own self, your own work, your own disciplines and practices, like the certification of all that work, right? And so Mars, on the other hand, let's see here, Mars being in a square to Uranus, while the moon has come into Pisces now. That's the other thing, is that the moon has come into Pisces, and now Mars is in a square to Uranus. So you're already emotionally and intuitively sensitive to the relationship and the form of the relationship, the dynamic of the relationship. And then you have Mars in a square to Uranus. That gives another strong urge to break free from restriction and rebel against authority. So this is going to be like those shifts and changes in belief system, purpose, and meaning is going to trigger this outward urge to break free, in terms of your works, your labors, what you're doing on the daily, right? Your Virgoan practices and disciplines and your healing process. There is a tendency to act rashly without regard for the consequences when Mars is in a square to Uranus, right? And the most important thing is just be aware this dynamic is here, and instead of leading to conflict and disruption, it can lead to innovation and creative breakthrough and a new personal life. And I would say that this is the case for the Virgo person, considering Mars is in your 6th house. This is like where you function, Virgo. Finding an area where you could break up the rules and have fun would be best. You cannot restrain this erratic energy, so you must express it, either creative, inventive, or crazy, in a safe environment, right? If you have a place to do it, find a creative outlet in a number of ways, right? And you need to be different. You need to make your own mistakes, right? There are changes in the overall purpose and meaning of relationship that is something Uranus is doing, but how we personally project ourselves into our daily lives is, yes, you might as well act and make your own mistakes, right? Because that's where you're going to learn. And it's better to do this in private than it is to do it public through a rash action and result in ridicule and ostracism. That's definitely going to happen for some people. You aim to get your dangerous desires out of your system safely without upsetting others. Again, right? This is going to be kind of in the privacy of your own practice, in your own work, in your own routines, in your own healing. This is the 6th house. And an original outlook, right? So you know that Uranus in the 9th house is, triggering these massive conversions in terms of what you believe and the bigger picture here. And so these changes can lead to works of creative brilliance, scientific breakthroughs that Mars can act on in terms of, I'm going to make these changes in my daily life. So breakthroughs, but you should avoid impulsive actions, right? The impulsiveness comes from the change that we have no control over. How we act on it should have a little bit of forethought. At least consider the consequences of your actions. And lack of attention and concentration can lead to accidents. So that's also important that you're, paying attention to things. Now, the sun will sextile Uranus pretty much on the same day as Mercury comes into your 8th house, Virgo. So Mars might be squaring it, but then the sun is in a sextile. The sun in your relationship land brings pleasant surprises and stimulating encounters. And it's, again, creativity is stimulated. There are breakthroughs, there are discoveries. It can be hard to stick to a routine. And basically, where the sun is, 20 degrees of Pisces, this is pretty much, the new moon is pretty much right there. But 20 degrees Pisces is an interesting symbol. And I want to leave you with this in terms of Sabian symbol. A table set for an evening meal, an indication that in the end and at the appointed time, the individual's needs will be met among those to whom this person is linked by a spiritual web of energies, right? That, everything at its right time, and when it's time, all the people that you are linked to will be together. And you don't have to force the issue in the relationship. And perhaps that will allow for some of that impulsive square energy with Uranus to have a place to go, which is some patience, which is a sense of trust, which is knowing that at the right time and the right place, everything, all the people that you are spiritually linked to ultimately, will come together when it's time. And I feel like that can take some of the edge off of like I got to act on some things right now. And then we'll have the new moon in Pisces the next day. And for Virgo people, I mean, you're going to have to really trust, something that is not that you can't intellectualize. It'll be tactile. It'll be innocent. You have to trust yourself to be able to know that when the time comes. And I think this sextile with Uranus right before that is the perfect kind of like, oh, yeah, I see the spiritual forces at work. And it may not be right now, but that's because, you know, the Great Spirit's grand design is beyond the capability of my individual mind in this moment. And to know that it's all part of God's plan. And if, you know, Pisces, of any sign, that is where you surrender to that, right? And that was those were some of the more comforting words, you know, in the last couple of days, to just give it up to God, give it up to divine source, surrender yourself to the flow, and it will flow exactly where it needs to. And it's only in those rapid changes that we don't anticipate that we get to see the spiritual forces at work in life in real time. And sometimes it's very difficult, and I can personally attest to that at this moment, how incredibly difficult that is. But this full moon is letting us know, I think, and will require that we apply this over the next couple of weeks in terms of just applying it over the next couple of weeks, right? That it's our responsibility to have a new beginning, as with all full moons, in the light of full consciousness. And that means being responsible and knowing that we always have the choice no matter what. And sometimes that choice can be to surrender to the flow, surrender to the Great Spirit, surrender to the divine plan, the law of God, the law of nature, and surrender to compassion and a sense of unconditional love, and that will always guide us. So anyway, now I'm just rambling. So my friends, thank you for being here. I truly appreciate all of you so very much. I would say now that you can go to the website. It's linked in the description box below. I am available to start taking readings and energy work sessions. So you can book directly through my website and pay. You'll get a direct email from me when you do that to start setting up everything about it. Of course, if you're interested in weekly astrology, if you're interested in special reports like the Wood Dragon I just did, and certainly the upcoming eclipse forecast that's going to be exclusive to paying members, you can link to Subscribestar in the description box below, and it'll tell you everything you need to know about the benefits of the different tiers of membership. So my friends, take very good care of yourselves. Enjoy this full moon period while we have it. It's pretty beautiful right now, at least where I'm at on the East Coast, getting a nice bright full moon. It hasn't been too overcast. So, and I will see you on the next video, which will be our new moon in Pisces. So Virgo people, it's always worth paying attention to the sign opposite of yours. But in the meantime, take care of yourselves, everyone. I'll talk to you soon. Bye.